Hi everyone, my name is Stu. I'm a learning designer in the Faculty of Education at UBC, and I'm here to talk to you a little bit about transitioning to teaching online. I've done a couple of videos, first talking about how time works differently in an online environment versus face-to-face, and another one about presence and establishing learning community. So if you're interested in those topics, feel free to have a look at those videos. In this video, I'm going to talk about measurement specifically in online courses. So the question here is, well, how can I measure student learning and engagement in an online course? In a face-to-face course, that's pretty easy. You can see the look on people's faces. You can see whether they understand something. They submit their assignments to you physically or digitally. There's a whole bunch of things that you can do to measure student learning face-to-face. And if you're new to teaching online, there's just a few considerations you need to think about. So first of all, attendance is typically not taken online at all. In a face-to-face course, obviously, you can see that people are showing up to the classroom, right? That's your measure of attendance, and it's assumed that when they show up, they are learning, that they're digesting all of the novel information you're giving to them, looking at the learning materials you're presenting, things like that. In an online environment, it doesn't usually work like that. What we can do most commonly is actually just look at task completion. So we can give them tasks to do throughout the term or the session. And so if there's activities they need to do on a weekly basis, we check to see if those are completed. If there's assignments submitted, we check to make sure that those are completed. And usually the platforms that we use are really good about giving us that information. There's another piece here called learning analytics, and what learning analytics means is just the information or the data that the platforms that we use, the technology platforms we use, can give us about the students' engagement. This is not a catch-all. It will not allow us to actually measure whether they're learning based on page views or what time of the day they're looking at things. But what it can do, it can actually let us see when students are engaging with things, if they're not looking at specific materials, things like that. A really, really common thing to use learning analytics for is very, very simple, and it's based on just looking at the last time the student logged in. So if they haven't logged in maybe 2 weeks or a week, that is a point where the instructor can say, oh, okay, maybe they've got something going on. I'm going to send them an email to make sure and remind them to actually log in. So that's one application of learning analytics. But for the most part, just be aware that attendance is not typically a thing in online courses. Now, with regards to assessment in general, there's actually a few things you actually can't assess online. It's a common misconception that if you're moving from a face-to-face environment to an online environment, that you actually can't do a lot of the assessment tasks or activities that you could do in the face-to-face environment. So for example, in an online chemistry class, you can still have students do lab experiments in the kitchen at home. If students are expected to perform in a fine arts class, then they can record themselves and upload the video. They can still do all the things that they need to do for these assessment tasks, they just do it in a different way. And same goes for kind of class presentations. You can still do class presentations online, but they just take a different form, whether it's like the creation of a video or a website, something like that. So just be aware that you can assess a lot online, and you'd be surprised with what you can do. Now, with regards to assessment, it's really important to be clear about your expectations through the instructions you give to students. If you think in a face-to-face class, if the students have any questions about assignments, they can ask that in a public forum, and everybody gets the answer, right? So if you're in class and somebody asks a question, you answer it, everybody hears that answer. But in an online environment, if somebody emails you, if some instructions aren't clear or if they misunderstand something, nobody else actually sees that answer. So it's really important to make sure that the instructions you're giving to your students with regards to how they're working on the assignments, what they're expected to create, the quality that you expect of that, maybe throw in a rubric, something like that. It's really important to actually have clarity around what they're expected to do, because it's quite common that students might interpret instructions in different ways. So this really helps to clarify things for them. Now, after the students have submitted things, you can provide feedback based on the platforms that you're using. You can use a rubric to give them feedback. You can annotate documents online. You can have other students actually give feedback on them. But one tip is when you're teaching online is just to use your voice. So a lot of platforms now will allow you to actually do a voice recording as feedback on documents or presentations that students are giving. And students really appreciate this because it allows the students to kind of feel like there's a one-on-one interaction happening, like they're in your office with you and you're just kind of talking about the assignment with them. So if you're able, if you're comfortable, if your platform allows you to use your voice to provide feedback, it's highly recommended and your students will appreciate that. Now, yes, when we're talking about group work, it is possible online, and it does actually work quite well. When I talked about alternatives earlier, it's pretty important to think about when you're in a classroom and students are maybe giving a PowerPoint as a group. That doesn't always work the best. It is possible online, but the affordances of the technologies that we're using online allow the students to do so much more. So they can create a podcast, they can create a video, they can write a blog post together and share that in a professional community. They can make a video tutorial and post it to YouTube. There are many options for them to actually work together and create a shared document or shared resource that will fill that niche of a group presentation. So try to consider alternatives when you're thinking about group work online. So as always, just especially when you're thinking about assessment, focus on your learning outcomes. Think about what the students need to learn, what they need to experience, and what they need to do. Again, you'll probably have to come up with some alternatives to what you do in your face-to-face classroom, but that doesn't mean it is less than. It just means it's kind of a different form. And if you are stumped or stressed with the transition teaching online, just know that there is a community out there to help. You have your fellow instructors, you have instructional designers at your institution, you also have online communities and social media, so feel free to check those, ask questions, and with these supports in place, you should do fine. So in this series of videos, I've just talked to you about 3 factors you might want to consider when you're transitioning from teaching face-to-face to online. Feel free to have a look at the other 2 about time and presence, and thanks very much.